What if your entire life changed just because you became disciplined for one single year?
Yeah, just 1 year.
Right. I mean, we usually think transformation takes decades, or, we assume we need some kind of lottery ticket stroke of luck. But 1 year, 365 days.
It really frames taking control of your life as something entirely within your grasp.
Exactly. But also, it's incredibly demanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
It immediately forces you to evaluate really everything you are doing today. Because today, we're looking at a deeply condensed, powerful script based on Martin Meadows' book, 365 Days with Self-Discipline.
and it zeroes in on a very specific mechanism of human behavior, doesn't it?
It does. It's really about bridging that gap between the chaotic reality of where you are right now and that idealized destination you have in your head.
Right, and every single person listening has faced this universal struggle. Like, you have these big goals mapped out. You want the promotion, or, you want better health.
Financial independence, maybe a side business.
Yeah, all of that. So you get started, and then, well, you hit a wall. You
Yeah.
quit halfway. So the mission of this deep dive today is to unpack the exact mechanism that separates the people who quit halfway from the people who actually, pull it off. The champions.
And Meadows makes a really bold claim right out of the gate here. He says the difference isn't talent,
No?
and it definitely isn't luck. He points directly to the trap of what we can call the motivation mirage.
The motivation mirage. Okay, I like that.
Right, because if we want to understand how you can actually achieve those big dreams, we have to look at the psychology of quitting first. We have to examine why people fail.
And the source points out that the number one excuse people use when they fail is a lack of motivation.
Exactly, they say, just wasn't feeling it. But motivation comes and goes. Champions, according to the text, rely on discipline.
We all know the cliche, right? That motivation is like a sugar rush.
Right, it feels great, but
But you crash quickly. It's so transient. Like, you watch an incredible documentary on a Sunday night, or you see a video of, I don't know, David Goggins running through the desert.
like classic Goggins effect.
Yeah, and you get this massive spike of energy. I mean, I've done this. I've been sitting on my couch at like 2 a.m., suddenly feeling like I can conquer the world.
So you buy all the gear?
I buy literally $200 worth of running gear online. I am incredibly motivated. But then, Tuesday morning rolls around.
And it's cold.
It's raining. My alarm goes off at 5 a.m. And that feeling is entirely gone. The shoes literally sit in my closet for 6 months.
Well, the neuroscience behind that 2 a.m. purchase perfectly illustrates the trap the source is talking about.
How so?
So when you watch that video or you imagine your future success, your brain gets flooded with dopamine. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter of anticipation and desire.
Okay.
It feels fantastic. But biologically, it is designed to be a short-term spike. You cannot maintain a dopamine high indefinitely. Your neurochemistry physically prevents it.
So you're doomed to crash.
Exactly. So if you tether your long-term goals to a neurochemical spike that is guaranteed to crash.
You are building a house on shifting sand.
Yes. Relying on discipline instead isn't just, a catchy self-help phrase. It's a biological necessity.
Because discipline is the actual nutritional meal that sustains you, unlike the sugar rush.
Right. Discipline operates in a completely different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that handles logic, planning, and executive function.
Oh, okay.
Discipline is an action you generate regardless of your neurochemical state. And champions understand this biological reality. They enjoy the motivation when it's there.
Sure, you ride the wave when you have it.
Exactly. But they never, ever rely on it.
But I want to push back on another reason people quit in this story. Aside from lacking motivation, the text notes that people blame bad luck and distractions.
Yes, the classic excuses.
But is it really fair to dismiss those as mere excuses? I mean, when you are exhausted and your motivation has already crashed, a flat tire or like a crisis at work isn't just an excuse. It genuinely feels like the universe is actively working against you.
The friction is absolutely real, but we have to look at how we perceive our own agency in those moments.
Okay, what do you mean?
This ties into the concept of locus of control. When you lack the internal structure of self-discipline, you have an external locus of control.
Meaning you think everything happens to you.
Right. The external world feels incredibly chaotic. Every minor inconvenience feels like a hurricane trying to blow you off course.
So it's not that disciplined people experience less bad luck. Like, they still get flat tires.
Oh, absolutely they do.
But it's that they have the internal engine to absorb the hit without it derailing their entire week.
Precisely. And from a psychological standpoint, cognitive bias plays a huge role here. Our brains are hardwired to protect our egos.
Oh, of course.
It is much less painful for your brain to say, I couldn't work on my business today because of bad luck and constant distractions, than it is to admit, I couldn't regulate my own behavior today.
Ouch. Yeah, that makes sense. Blaming luck is just an ego defense.
It is. And the source forces us to strip away that protective layer and look at the raw mechanics of why we actually stop moving forward.
So if our brains are biologically wired to crash after a motivation spike, and we are psychologically wired to blame the universe when things get hard to protect our ego,
Which we are.
right, then how do we physically override that? Because the framework really hinges on this moment of what the text calls a shocking realization. It's the pivot point.
Yeah, the realization is really simple but profound. It's that success is not built in one day, it is built daily.
Built daily. Man, we're so conditioned to expect the movie montage, aren't we?
Oh, totally.
Like 2 minutes of an upbeat song, the calendar pages fly off the wall, and suddenly the hero has a six-pack and a successful company. We unconsciously expect the timeline of achievement to feel like that.
But real life is the Tuesday morning rain.
Exactly.
The montage effect ruins our expectations.
Yeah.
The epiphany of microcontrol here is accepting that macro-level success is entirely dependent on micro-level decisions.
And the source offers a specific phrase to act on this realization that I think changes the entire game. The character says, every single day, I will control myself a little more.
A little more.
Right, a little more. I love that. It doesn't demand that you become a flawless, robotic perfectionist overnight.
No, because going from zero discipline to total, rigid control in 24 hours is just a recipe for catastrophic failure.
Right, you'd snap.
The psychological friction is too high, your brain will literally rebel, but applying a little more is the principle of progressive overload applied to your willpower. It's a threshold you can actually always meet.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual application of this progressive overload, because it's one thing to say, I'll control myself a little more, and another to, execute it.
Yeah.
The text highlights 4 specific daily actions the character took, the 4 pillars of microcontrol.
Right. Waking up early, avoiding distractions, doing hard things even when you don't feel like it, and staying consistent.
I want to spend some time on these, because the devil is absolutely in the details here. Let's start with waking up early. I've tried this. The friction of those first 10 minutes is brutal.
It is the worst.
Why is this specific action so foundational to the whole year-long experiment?
Well, waking up early sets a neurochemical and psychological baseline for the next 16 hours.
Okay.
When the alarm goes off, you are in a state of sleep inertia. Your limbic system, the primitive part of your brain that seeks comfort, is basically screaming at you to stay in the warm bed.
Oh, it is streaming.
Right, so hitting the snooze button feels like a harmless concession. But you are literally starting your day by yielding to your limbic system instead of your prefrontal cortex.
Wow, you were practicing defeat right out of the gate.
Exactly. But when you override that comfort-seeking drive and get up, you log your first empirical victory of the day.
You prove to yourself, before the sun is even up, that your logical intentions can override your physical discomfort.
And that momentum carries over into how you handle the rest of the day.
That makes total sense. You are establishing the hierarchy of your brain before you even brush your teeth.
Yes.
Okay, the second pillar is avoiding distractions. And in the modern environment, this feels almost impossible. I mean, our phones are basically slot machines engineered by thousands of smart people to steal our attention.
They are. And this is where discipline acts as a defensive shield rather than an offensive weapon.
A defensive shield.
Yeah. Every time you switch your context, say, pausing a project to check a notification, you incur a cognitive penalty.
Right, the switching cost.
Exactly. It takes the brain roughly 20 minutes to get back to the same depth of focus. So avoiding distractions isn't just about saving time, it's about protecting your cognitive bandwidth.
So it's not just put your phone away so you can work longer. It's put your phone away so you aren't burning your limited daily willpower on constantly refocusing.
Yes. Defensive discipline is setting up your environment so you don't even have to make a choice. If the phone is in another room, you don't have to burn energy resisting it.
Which brings us to the third pillar. And honestly, this one feels like the absolute crucible of this entire philosophy.
Doing hard things even when you do not feel like it.
Yes. This directly attacks the motivation mirage we talked about earlier.
It is the core mechanism of the entire framework. When you do a hard thing while actively lacking the desire to do it, you are actively rewiring your brain. You are forging new neural pathways.
Wait, explain that. What is physically happening in the brain when you force yourself to go for a run or, like, write that proposal when every fiber of your being wants to watch TV?
Okay, so normally we follow the path of least resistance. The neural pathway for sit on the couch is an 8-lane superhighway.
Right. Very easy to travel down.
Exactly. But the pathway for go for a run in the rain is a dirt trail covered in weeds. When you force yourself onto the dirt trail, despite the discomfort, you are laying down myelin.
Violet.
Yeah, it's an insulating layer around your nerves that makes signals travel faster. You are literally paving a new road in your brain. Do it enough times, and the hard thing becomes your default behavior.
Wow. It's like you're proving to yourself in real time that your feelings do not dictate your reality.
Yes.
Your actions dictate your reality. The emotion of, I don't want to do this, just becomes irrelevant noise.
And that realization is incredibly empowering. It completely decouples your productivity from your mood.
Which naturally leads right into the fourth pillar. Staying consistent, doing a hard thing once proves you have the capacity.
Sure.
But consistency is what actually triggers the compounding effect, right? You can't just pave that new neural highway for 3 days and expect it to stick.
No, consistency is the timeline over which the neuroplasticity actually occurs.
Right.
The framework isn't 30 days to a new you. It's 365 days.
Right.
It's an acknowledgement that meaningful structural changes to your psychology take time. The compounding interest of the brain only yields dividends if you don't interrupt it.
Okay, so you start executing on these 4 pillars. You are waking up, you're defending your focus, you're pushing through the resistance, and you're doing it consistently.
Yep.
To explain what happens internally over those 365 days, the text relies heavily on this metaphor that self-discipline is like a muscle.
The more you train it, the stronger you become.
Right, but I actually have to challenge this metaphor a bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because if self-discipline is genuinely like a physical muscle, well, muscles fatigue, they can tear. If I go to the gym and do heavy deadlifts every single day without resting, I don't get stronger. I break down. My central nervous system fries.
Absolute.
Doesn't constantly overriding your desire for comfort day in and day out eventually lead to absolute psychological burnout?
Well, if you approach it like maxing out your deadlift every day, yes, you will burn out.
Mm-hmm.
But here is where the metaphor actually holds up beautifully.
Okay.
The key to muscular hypertrophy muscle growth is the optimal dose of stress. You don't grow by lifting the heaviest weight possible every single day. You grow through progressive overload. You lift a weight that is heavy enough to challenge you, but light enough that you can recover.
Going back to the phrase a little more.
Exactly. Burnout happens when you try to lift the 500-pound weight of completely changing your identity, your diet, your sleep schedule, and your career all on a Monday morning.
Right, which never works.
Never. Discipline is built by lifting the 5-pound weight of waking up 15 minutes earlier. You exert the effort, you recover, the willpower muscle adapts, and next week you lift a 10-pound weight.
You are stressing the system just enough to force an adaptation, but not enough to cause a tear.
Precisely.
So it's the compounding effect of microstresses. And the results of this compounding effect are really fascinating in the story because the text lays out a specific timeline.
Right. Days pass, then weeks, then months.
Yeah, and there's a very specific order to the transformation. It says confidence grew, the mind became stronger, habits changed, and ultimately the entire life transformed.
Notice how the internal shift always precedes the external success.
It has to, right?
You cannot sustain external success without the internal architecture to support it.
I want to dig into that mechanism because people talk about confidence like it's a magic aura you're either born with or you aren't.
Right.
But this source is framing confidence as a direct byproduct of discipline. How does that actually work? How does waking up early translate into confidence?
Because true self-confidence is not bravado. It is an evidence-based metric.
Evidence-based.
Yeah. Confidence is simply a reputation you build with yourself. Every time you say, I am going to wake up at 6 a.m. and you actually do it, you are providing your brain with undeniable empirical evidence that you keep your own promises.
You are literally depositing evidence into your own mental bank account.
Exactly. And conversely, every time you hit snooze, you log evidence that you are unreliable.
Wow.
Over weeks and months of doing hard things and keeping your promises, that accumulation of positive data is what we experience as confidence. Your mind becomes stronger because it is no longer a victim to transient emotions. You have built structural integrity into your psychology.
That reframes the entire concept of self-esteem. It's not something you manifest by looking in a mirror and reciting affirmations.
No.
It is the logical result of an accumulation of kept promises. And what really strikes me about this transformation is the reassurance the text offers about the person going through it.
That they weren't somehow extraordinary to begin with.
Right. It emphasizes that this entire life change happened not because he was special, but because he became disciplined.
Which completely democratizes the idea of success. It removes the mystical, untouchable aura around people who achieve their big dreams.
You don't need a specific genetic code for willpower. You don't need to be born under a lucky star, and you don't need to wait for a lightning bolt of motivation.
It is a formula.
It shifts the locus of control entirely inward. You are no longer waiting for the universe to grant you permission to succeed, and you are no longer making excuses about distractions.
You take ownership of the daily mechanics of your own life.
And that brings us to the core thesis of this entire 365-day philosophy. There is a defining line that anchors everything we've unpacked today.
Your future is created by what you do every day, not by what you do once in a while.
Let that sink in for a second. Not by what you do once in a while. That completely destroys the weekend warrior approach to changing your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you cannot eat garbage for 6 days and expect a single salad on Sunday to reset your biology.
No.
You can't scroll on your phone for 8 hours a day and expect a 2-hour burst of frantic, caffeinated work on Friday to build a successful career.
We are not what we occasionally do. We are our baseline. And your baseline is established by your daily habits.
Right.
It is a profound truth about human nature that we constantly try to hack or bypass, but you just cannot bypass the daily baseline.
So here's what is at stake for you listening right now. If you want the destination you mapped out in your head, if you want laser-like focus, if you want evidence-based confidence and true mental strength, the building blocks don't start when you finally feel motivated.
Because we know that dopamine rush is a mirage.
Exactly. The building blocks start today. With one small decision to override your limbic system, put the phone away, and control yourself just a little bit more.
Stop waiting for the montage to start and start building the daily evidence.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Building on that physical muscle metaphor we discussed earlier. We established that self-discipline requires progressive overload. You have to train it daily through small, consistent actions so you don't burn out.
Right.
But if self-discipline is indeed like a physical muscle, we also know that physical muscles don't actually grow while you are lifting the weight.
They grow afterward.
Exactly, during periods of rest and recovery. So what does rest look like for your self-discipline? Does true, sustainable discipline over 365 days also mean knowing exactly when to strategically schedule your moments of complete indulgence, intentionally letting go of control, just so the muscle can rebuild?
That's a great question. The space between the effort is where the actual growth happens. Mastering that balance is the real challenge.
Something to think about as you start laying down those new neural pathways tomorrow morning. Until next time.